All right, let's get started with this webinar. A few weeks ago, we started this series about Azure Stack HCI, and after today, there will be a few more on subtopics of this story. Now, today's session is all about the architecture and licensing basics for the Azure Stack HCI. So you get an idea about how this is built up and what the components are for this technology. Speaking today is my friend and colleague Samir Maiseka, all the way from India. Hello, Samir. Are you here?
Namaste.
Namaste. And I will be helping to host the session and add to the story. I am Bob Cornelissen, the technical director of TopQore and an 11-year MVP for cloud and data center management. So let's get started with the session then. Samir, go ahead.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thanks, Bob. Right, so I won't spend a lot of time introducing myself again. Bob has already done that. So the agenda for so Bob has already mentioned, right? So this is the next episode, so to say, of the series of episodes that we are doing about Azure Stack HCI. And previously, what we have done, so if you missed, can I try to just change the slide?
Yes.
No, apparently it's not working. Is it changing? There
yes.
You go. It's a lot of lag. Yeah, so if you missed the last episode, let's go over the quick highlights from the last episode. So we talked about digital transformation, the age of digital transformation, the rise of new technologies, microservices and hybrid clouds and HCI and Azure Arc and cloud native application development and so on. Given the fact that there are new demands coming from all over the world, may it be coming from the developers, could be coming from the users, could be coming from the core functionality of your business. This is overall impacting the how your strategy of how you lay out your IT infrastructure today, right? So it is not always best to go to cloud, definitely not blindly, right? So I am all the advocate for going to the public cloud if your workloads asks for it, demands for it, but don't believe anything and everything blindly. Do your homework and evaluate your workload, whether it is suitable to move to the public cloud or not. So these are just some bits and pieces that we covered from the last episode. We talked about Azure Arc. We talked about what a hybrid cloud is. Just to go through the highlights again, why do we need? What is the need of the seemingly sudden rise of hybrid cloud today? So the main reason is data sovereignty and compliance. So if you're working in an organization that is focused on verticals like medical or insurance or finance or military, government, right? So in these organizations, data is gold. Data is the most valuable thing for these organizations, right? And it has to be very private, because all of this data contains the data. It could be containing the data of the patient, or it could be containing the data of the citizens. If it's a military site, then it has military organization, then it has data sensitive data about the military bases, maybe military personnels. So all of this data is top secret, and we don't want to send it out somewhere where we don't have the control over it. So that is the main reason that we see that people are choosing to keep their data on-prem. The other big one is edge workloads with GPU processing, right? So if you think about, let's say, mining and oiling industry, you've got these rigs and these plants in the most remote locations where you don't necessarily have the luxury to connect to your internet and connect to your public cloud and send the data in real time to the public cloud, have it processed there and bring it back. So it's just simply connectivity wise, it is not possible. Latency wise, it is a nightmare, right? So think about if you have a medical software or imaging system going on that is heavily dependent on AI, ML, or graphic processing capabilities, you can't send that data to public cloud and wait for it to come back. No, you want to process it right then and there where it is being produced. Right. So in the cases where it is GPU heavy or cases where the latency is of utmost importance, you cannot rely on going to public clouds. And then again, remote sites, branch offices, think about retail organizations, think about things like Walmart, Reliance in India, and 7-Elevens, right? So these are the retail store that you have branches all over the place, right? So there's like every 500 meters, maybe there's a Reliance store or a 7-Eleven somewhere, right? So where is this data being generated? Where is it going? Does it always go to the public cloud? Well, yes, but um, the sheer amount of data that is being generated at the remote sites or branch offices today is tremendous, right? So you can't always wait for, say, take this example. You go to a 7-Eleven store, you purchase what, a dozen bananas maybe, or eggs or apples, whatever, and you're waiting in the line for for paying the bill and getting out of there. So imagine how long would you like to wait in the line? Ideally 0 minutes, right? Okay, practically it could be 5 minutes, but definitely not more than that. Just imagine standing there for 15 to 20 minutes, just waiting for the software to respond or waiting for the bill to be generated. Right. So this data or this processing power has to be locally present. The servers have to be locally present to be able to handle that data, right? You can't always rely on a virtual machine in somewhere in East Europe or North America or whatever. And so this is where all the data is being generated, and you want it to be quick. You want it to be efficient. So these again ties into the benefits. What is the benefit of a hybrid cloud? Hybrid cloud is essentially the combination of public cloud and a private cloud, right? So you don't have to, be educated about what a public and private cloud is. I'm assuming it is a safe bet to think that everybody knows about what a public cloud is. But the disadvantage, let's say, or the trade-off when you go to public cloud, is that you give away some control on your data, right? So you can't always control the platform where your data is sitting on. So think about IaaS or think about PaaS. PaaS, for example, right, is probably the best example. PaaS or SaaS. It's like you are holding, you're running a SQL MI, but you don't have the control over what is running underneath the SQL MI instance, right? So you cannot either stay on the same version or you cannot manually upgrade or update the hardware or software of a particular service that you're using in public cloud. Right, so you kind of lose that data, that control over the data sometimes. Um, Now you can connect to Azure to utilize cloud native services. Um, Think about Azure Monitor, think about Azure Backup or Azure Site Recovery. And so these are excellent tools. You don't have to, keep investing into something that, that is already there. If you have hybrid cloud, you have presence in Azure, then why not use the same services across your infrastructure, regardless of where it is sitting, right? So for Azure, sure, Azure Monitor comes default, but why should you miss out on the virtual machine that is running on your premise? If you want to use, you have a, let's say you're in love with Azure Monitor and you have all the policies in place and you've got all the data and metrics and dashboards and everything you have got set up for the public cloud. And you also want to integrate your private assets to the same framework, right? So why should you miss out? So that is where the hybrid cloud shines through. And then you
Yep.
can also run applications on-prem with cloud-like operating model. And so when I say cloud-like operating model, what I like to call is whenever I talk about Azure Stack HCI or hybrid clouds, I always say that cloud is not a place anymore. It is not a place. It is a concept. It is an operating model, right? So we're all very familiar with using the familiarity of Azure portal. We love the way it looks. We love the way it operates. We love the way that it is user friendly, right? So you've got all the options. in the single pane of glass. So you've got hyperlinks going from here to anywhere, basically, right? So we want that flexibility. We want that operating model also on the resources that are running on-prem. Why should you miss out? Right. So it
Yes.
is, we want to run out. Yeah. So we want to run all our applications in a cloud-like operating model and be charged per usage base, by the way. So a lot of people are also, they're looking to get out of the capital expenditure model. They want to go for OPEX, right? Operating expense. So you only pay for whatever that you're using. Why should you pay for something that you're not even using? That is just makes things easier that way. So these are just some of the need use cases and benefits of adopting the hybrid cloud.
Yes, but also because it's a little bit different when running these servers on premises, right? Because
Yeah.
now it doesn't matter if they run a few hours at night, even. Because
Yes.
you pay them a little bit differently and not anywhere more per minute or something like that. So you still own that hardware, and yeah, nobody cares anymore how much CPU and memory you use as long as it fits on your hardware.
Exactly. Yeah, that is a good point. Again, when you use public cloud, you automatically in parallel you should think about how do I reduce the expense, because cloud
Yep.
can get expensive pretty quickly, right? If you're not careful with it, if you keep running resources overnight or over time without using them, you may think, okay, it's just a single, I don't know what a single SQL managed instance, how much is it going to cost? Well, keep it
A
running
few
for the
hundred.
2 days and you're going to find out. Yeah. So it is not cheap, right? Convenience does not come for free. Well, in the previous episode, we also talked about Azure Arc. What Azure Arc is again, like as we like to call it, it is the glue that sticks your non-Azure resources to Azure portal. And so it does not matter, regardless of where your the resources are deployed, you can still project a copy of it in the Azure portal. And once you've got that resources projecting in the portal, you can use the same Azure Resource Manager framework, the ARM templates, the PowerShell, the CLI commands. So all of these tools, Terraform, like automation. So all of these things you can do on your non-Azure resources as well as if they were your Azure resources, as if they were native. And so
Right.
Azure Arc is amazing, and it is so you may be wondering, so why does it matter? So we are talking about, or we are supposed to be talking about Azure Stack HCI today, but we are talking about Azure Arc. Well, the answer is simple. Azure Arc is at the heart of the whole Microsoft hybrid story. And so if you think about the three port products that that Microsoft offers under this category is Azure Stack Hub, Azure Stack HCI, and Azure Stack Edge. All these three products use Azure Arc at the base of it. Azure Arc is just a piece of software, by the way, right? It's just an agent. You can
Yes.
install it any VM, that's regardless of where it is sitting. And so if you go through this architecture, it's not an architecture, but if you go through this diagram here, starting from the bottom, you see there's Azure Stack HCI, VMware, AWS, GCP. What that means is it does not matter where your resource is. It could be running on Azure Stack HCI. It could be running in an entirely different vendor, VMware. It could be running on an entirely different hyperscaler even. It could be running in AWS, could be running on GCP. Does not matter at all. What matters is that you can connect using Azure Arc, this resource, to Azure portal regardless. Right. So Azure Arc actually works in two ways, let's say. First is it not only projects your resources to Azure, but it also brings down Azure services to your non-local resources. And so what I mean by that is, say, suppose you have a virtual machine in on-prem that is sitting in, I don't know, in India, let's say, for example, in an Indian, I have my private server that I'm running here. What I do is I install Azure Arc on it and I connect it to Azure portal. Now, despite this server being installed locally in my home, not in the Azure portal, I can still operate it as if it was deployed in Azure using Azure Arc. And so as soon as I deploy, install that agent, I get the capability to treat that resource as if it was native. So I can use Azure Monitor with it. I can tag, I can apply policies to it. I can do backups, I can do ASR, I can do all kinds of things. And so as if, again, as if it was an Azure server.
And that is just by adding
And
an agent to it and a few add-ons to the agent, which
exactly.
enable you to run all of these workloads.
The extensions, right? Exactly. So it gives you that flexibility. Just think about it, right? How powerful it is. Now I'm giving you a dummy example, but think your organization has maybe hundreds or thousands of servers that are running on-prem, and you've got a considerable system that is going on in the public Azure portal as well. So now what you have to do is you end up operating this separately and then this separately. But using Azure Arc, you can combine it all together and operate it from a single pane of glass. So again, if you've been working in Azure space or even Windows Server admin space, you know how powerful and how convenient this is.
Oh, yes.
The flip side of this is I can also bring down the services, right? So some of the most popular things in Azure are what? Azure Monitor, data services like AKS, for example, app services like, well, yeah, app services, Azure Functions, automation, Azure Automation, right? Azure Update Management, machine learning. So these are some of the most commonly used or some of the most popular services that are being offered by Microsoft in public Azure. Only because I don't have my service or my server or my workload on public Azure, why should that mean that I cannot use these services? Right? I can still use them. I can bring them down using Azure Arc. Right, so you see here, these arrows go up and down as well. So there's this arrow goes up and arrow goes down. That means is you can project your resources or infrastructure on Azure as well as bring down from Azure services that suit your workload in on-premise infrastructure as well. So, and this is very, very powerful, and all of this is at the heart of the whole Microsoft hybrid story.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, so let's talk about what Azure Stack HCI is, right? So by the way, if you have any questions, anybody, please feel free to type it in the chat and we'll go through the questions. So what is Azure Stack HCI? So if you've been in Windows admin for any amount of time, you probably already know what Hyper-V is. You probably already know what S2D is, and if you've been working in Azure, you know what Azure inspired SDN is. Hyper-V is basically the virtualization platform that Microsoft provides. S2D is the way to manage your storage. So in a nutshell, what S2D does is it pools all the drives, it pools all the storage from across the cluster. Say, for example, I have 4 nodes or 4 servers in my cluster. What S2D is going to do is it is going to pool all those or pool all those drives and present to me one big combined storage pool, right? And then out of that, I can chop off, I can create smaller storages or drives or volumes, right? So that is what S2D does. Again, there's a whole lot more to S2D than just this, but we will have an upcoming episode sometime dedicated entirely to S2D, entirely to Hyper-V, and entirely to SDN as well.
Very nice.
Yeah, it is pretty awesome because what it does, Bob, is it frees you up to do more important things because S2D is again self-healing in some ways. So if something goes down, it is going to automatically give you the high availability, so you don't lose any data. So it is hot swappable, so you can just plug in and out drives. You can just expand it. S2D pool will automatically accommodate the new storage, and it will adjust the storage pool. So it is a lot of things are automated. So frees you up from the a lot of administrative overhead. Not only S2D, but also Hyper-V and networking components as well. So we also specifically wanted to call out stretch. Yeah, so I wanted to specifically call out stretch clustering for disaster recovery. So you know that the always best practice is that you have a primary site and then you also have a secondary site. In the events of the primary site going down, that you have your data replicated to a secondary site. This is a built-in feature for Azure Stack HCI. Now, when I mentioned this in the comparison slide that is upcoming in the slide deck later, Bob asked me a very good question. Bob, you remember the question you asked me?
Can't we do this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Can't we do this with stretch clustering and these kind of things? Isn't it already built in?
Exactly. Yeah. So that was a good question. So the difference is with Windows Server today also you can do stretch clustering, but the fundamental difference is that you can do it in case of Windows Server, it is using storage replica technology.
Yes.
And with Azure Stack HCI, it is based on S2D underneath. So
that's the
that, well,
difference.
yeah. Well, there are more differences as well. And to you on a high level, it may sound like not a big deal, very slight difference, but the difference is noticeable when it comes to performance. That is where stretch clustering is a default feature, built-in feature that comes with Azure Stack HCI operating system. So again, Azure Stack HCI is hybrid by design. So what I mean by that is Azure Stack HCI is in itself a resource provider. It is a first-class resource in Azure. So what do I mean by a first-class resource? So when you deploy Azure Stack HCI, you deploy a cluster, right? So you may have like two node cluster, 3-node cluster, 4-node cluster, up to 16 nodes cluster. So you deploy it as a cluster, and then you have to register it to Azure portal, right? It is part of the deployment that you must register it with Azure portal. Once you do that, it appears as a first-class resource in public Azure portal. Again, what that means is that you can click on it, you can drill down into it, you have all the features and advantages and all the tools and capabilities that are available to any native public service. You can operate the same services or the same operating model to the cluster, to your Azure Stack HCI cluster. Remember, this is sitting on-prem. This is not sitting in Azure. But to Azure, it feels like, hey, it is a native resource to me. So it does not differentiate.
And that is also because this operating system is basically almost the same as what Azure is using as an operating system, right?
Yeah, that's what Microsoft is claiming, yes. So Azure Stack HCI it is gaining a lot of popularity. Again, like Bob said, it is even Microsoft, they are using Azure Stack HCI at the background as their virtualization platform, as their storage management system, and their networking solutions again. So Microsoft is actually making a lot of investment in this area. Again, we will talk about some of the investments or some hybrid benefits that Microsoft gives you later in the slide deck, but be assured that Azure Stack HCI is going to go big and not too far in the future then. So it is gonna take off, I think, at least in my opinion, though. Well, so management and governance with Azure Manager by Azure Arc. Again, we've talked about this. Using Azure Arc, if you install the software on these services, on these workloads, you can project it to Azure and treat them as if it was a native resource. Now, since it is built on subscription, it is always up to date. You don't have to manually, go ahead and upgrade or update anything. And it has native integration with Azure services. Again, some of the services are Azure Backup, maybe or site recovery, or Azure Monitor, Azure Update Management, Azure Automation, Azure Functions, all these good things, or Azure App Services, SQL Managed Instance. So the list goes on. And it has familiar management and operations. So if you've been a Windows admin, you know some of the most common tools that Windows admins use to manage any Windows environment, which is what? Windows Admin Center. It could be
Yes.
System Center tools, right? You could be using SCCM for your patching, SCOM for monitoring, Service Manager for ticketing maybe, and let's say Orchestrator for automation. You can still keep using that even if you migrate to Azure Stack HCI, because it does not make to a user, to a system, it does not make any difference whether it is sitting on your on your private cloud or on your hybrid cloud. It treats it the same way. And if you've been using any third-party tools for monitoring, so maybe you could be using Nagios, for example, you could be using ServiceNow, you could be using, I don't know, whatever, all the tools that you've got for security or backup restore, right? These tools you can still keep using even if you migrate to Azure Stack HCI. It does not make a difference.
Right.
Again, yeah, so it just goes on to say that it integrates seamlessly with whatever infrastructure or whatever state you already have, whatever that you're already used to. So you don't have to start reinventing the wheel, or you don't have to start from the scratch again. So you've already got the skill set, you've already got the capabilities, the tools. So why not just repurpose it, instead of learning everything from the scratch?
Very good.
So let's get deeper into architecture. Let's open up Azure Stack HCI and see what is underneath. So this is the high level diagram. So there are two parts to it. Let's focus on the left part first. So you start from the bottom. So you start from the hardware. Again, Azure Stack HCI starts at the hardware level. So if you want to buy Azure Stack HCI today, you have to buy it from hardware level, right? So you have to go to a hardware vendor or Microsoft. They will point you out to the vendors that they have. And you've got a validated hardware that is tested for especially running Azure Stack HCI. Again, we have got a slide later that lays out the differences between Windows Server and Azure Stack HCI. So we'll talk more about that then. And then on this hardware, you install Azure Stack HCI operating system. Again, Azure Stack HCI is, keep this in mind, it is an operating system. There's nothing scary about it. It's just an operating system, which is which is focused, or it is specialized on Hyper-V for virtualization, S2D for storage, and SDN for networking. So when you install Azure Stack HCI operating system on it, it basically runs a health service, Azure Stack HCI hybrid service there, which connects to your Azure subscription on the right. We'll go to the right part in a bit. So as we go further up, we've got on-premises Hyper-V. So from this point on, you've got a couple of choices. So you can use the virtualization layer as any simple virtualization layer, a traditional virtualization layer, and install secondary operating systems on it, or guest operating systems, as we like to call it. So it could be Windows Server VMs, it could be Linux Server VMs. And licensing for this goes traditionally. So if you've got any Windows Server licenses laying around already, you can use those same licenses. So you don't have to scramble to get new Windows Server licenses. So you can still keep using that. Or what you can do is you can install AKS on top of Azure Stack HCI operating system. What AKS? So AKS is probably the most popular service in Azure, or fastest growing Azure service, I think, of today, AKS. If you're familiar with what AKS is, it's just basically Microsoft's management system for managing your Kubernetes environment. To put it in a very, very crude language, that's what AKS is. So once you've got AKS installed, then you can install containers on it and run your microservices like that. Or the combination of both. You don't have to choose one or the other. You can run partially. You can run Azure Windows Server VMs, and with the remaining resources, you can also use AKS at the same time on the same hardware. And all of this is managed with Windows Admin Center user interface, right? So again, This is where the familiarity of Windows or familiarity of Microsoft comes in. Is like you've already got the tools, you're already familiar with it. Just repurpose it a little bit. Just learn Azure Stack HCI and use the same tool. Use the same PowerShell proficiency that you've got. Use the same System Center tools. You can also do this with System Center, Virtual Machine Manager. Also, by the way, you can also deploy Azure Stack HCI operating system and manage it with SCBMM. And then on top of it, using Azure Arc, you can connect remotely to Azure services wherever your resource is. It does not have to be local or native to Azure. It can be anywhere. You can still use Azure services. Now let's go towards the right side here, right? So we've got that glue here, Arc, that is sticking the Azure Stack HCI on-premise solution to Azure Cloud. That you see the block, it says Arc and other service agents. Other service agents being Microsoft Monitoring Agent, or it could be a backup agent, or it could be ASR agent, for example, right? So using these agents, you can connect resources to public cloud and use the services. So the list of services that are being enabled for Azure Arc is growing day by day. So it started with Azure Arc enabled servers, or Azure Arc enabled virtual machines. Now you've also got Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes, for example, right? So you can consistently manage your Kubernetes environment regardless of whether it is deployed. It could be deployed on Azure Stack HCI, could be deployed on Azure, but you can still consistently manage both the environments from the single pane of glass. And on top of it, you've got some examples of Azure Arc enabled other hybrid services. So some of the ones that I see are Azure Update or Azure Monitor. I see Azure Automation there. I see Azure, I think that is Site Recovery or Backup, one or the other. Key Vaults. So all these things you can still use using Azure Arc capabilities. So tools and user experience and ARM. This ARM is the framework that Azure resources work under, say, for example. This remains the same. This remains consistent, whether it is an Azure resource or an Azure Stack HCI resource.
Right.
Yeah, it's very interesting, actually, if you really think about it. Just the ability to manage everything consistently from a single pane of glass is beyond imagination. It is amazing.
Yes.
So
this was actually the reason why in the 10 years ago or something like that, the whole System Center suite was meant for this, but on premises. And now we have all of those cloud items which are managed totally different, but now we can use Arc and other tools around it, also Windows Admin Center, to monitor, manage, and adjust all of this, as well as just the guest VMs, let's say, but also the whole infrastructure parts, which is great.
It is amazing. Yeah, exactly. So it takes out a lot from the admin overhead, and you can just focus on what matters and not get bogged down into troubleshooting and integration and all that stuff. Right. So again, we've said that Windows Server is very similar to Azure Stack HCI, but there are also some subtle differences there. This is just a brief list of some of the major ones. The list is comprehensive, but let's just go through some of the major ones here. Let's start with licensing. So Windows Server has its own paid license. So you've got Data Center Edition, Standard Editions, and then you license your Windows Server per, is it physical core or virtual core? I don't even.
Yes. For the physical cores.
Yeah. So there are a bunch of types for licensing for Windows Server, isn't there?
Yes, actually you have the normally is the physical per physical core, and if you buy the Windows Server license or the Windows Data Center license, so the Data Center licenses are actually per 16 cores, and then moving upwards, and you can buy extra cores as well. But this is how it's licensed in general, and then you can have that with or without software assurance, which is something that we will come back to later, which is basically that you pay an extra 25% per year, and which entitles you to upgrade to any next version of Windows that comes out by Microsoft.
Yeah, for free.
Yes, well, you paid for it already. That's the software assurance, right?
Yeah.
But that means that, for example, if in 2 years you get a new operating system, then you don't need to buy the whole new Windows license because you can just keep using yours with software assurance. And then, of course, there's the difference with the second column there, the Azure Stack HCI, which is built based on your Azure subscription, which is something that we will come back to later in a few slides.
Yeah. So again, if anything I've got from all of that, Bob, is like Windows Server licensing is kind of complex, but Azure Stack HCI licensing is very straightforward. So Azure Stack HCI licensing, if you look at the bottom, the last row here, Windows Server varies, but it is usually per core. But for Azure Stack HCI, it is a plain per core per month. So if whatever amount of physical cores that you have bought from your vendor, that is what you're going to be charged on. So it does not matter what you're running on top of it. Does not matter how many users are connecting to it. There is no concept of CALs here. I think Windows Server operating system also has CALs.
Yes,
which
depending.
Yeah. So with Azure Stack HCI doesn't. Right. So Azure Stack HCI has the most simplified licensing model that I have come across from Microsoft, at least, which is great.
Don't worry.
It takes off.
They will make it more complex soon. Don't worry.
Well, they're trying to minimize, again, as we'll talk about it more, they're trying to, with hybrid benefits, they are trying to minimize even further or simplify the licensing even further. So let's fingers crossed. Let's hope that keeps that, stays like that. So some of the other ones, technical ones, is like Azure Arc integration for things like AKS, PaaS, and VMs. Is it possible to do on Windows Server? Absolutely, yes, you can do it, but you have to install the Azure Arc agent manually on all of your hosts and guests. While on Azure Stack HCI, it is by default. So Azure Stack operating system, the host already comes with an Azure Arc agent, and everything that you run on top of it also gets Azure Arc agent automatically. And so it has native integration with Azure Arc, and by extension, native integration to the public cloud. Now, hardware. What does Windows Server run on? Windows Server runs on most things, I would say, right?
Yeah.
It runs on premise, it runs on your server, it runs on a laptop, it runs on an Azure virtual machine, it runs on a Windows. It runs on an AWS virtual machine. You can install it anywhere as long as it is running on certified hardware. If you want the support, if it is running on certified hardware, then yes, it can run anywhere. And keep in mind, Azure Windows Server is the guest operating system. What that means is Windows Server contains libraries, or it contains frameworks, it contains all the roles and features that you see in an operating system, right? That is what Windows Server is made up of. It has print and spooler, it has Hyper-V, it has what other rules are there? It has
a bit of everything, actually, right?
Yeah, it's everything. It has some storage things, it has some networking things, and so on. While Azure Stack HCI is purpose built only for I won't say virtualization, but it's only for hybrid operating model, right? That is what Azure Stack HCI's purpose, the purpose of Azure Stack HCI is. So it does not have all the features, all the roles that Windows Server has, but that is because it does not need them, right? The Azure Stack HCI operating system is only supposed to work as a host operating system. Anything that you install on top of it will go in the secondary guest operating system. right? So you will install Azure Stack HCI operating system. Then on top of it, you will install Windows Server operating system. And in that, you will run your applications. You won't run your applications directly on top of Azure Stack HCI. And so that is the difference between application wise. This is the difference between these two operating systems. Well, both of them do support software defined data center components such as Hyper-V, S2D, and SDN. Again, all of this is software defined. So you've got consoles, you've got softwares and tools to manage all of this from a single pane of glass. So you don't have to keep swapping the hardware or work with the consoles, of weird shapes and sorts and colors. You can do all of that from Windows Admin Center centrally. And you can do this for both the operating systems. Now, this is an interesting part. The next free ESUs, extended security updates for Windows Server 2008, 2008 R2, and SQL 2008, 2008 R2. So you don't get free extended security supports for Windows Server. If you do, you have to purchase it, and it is pretty hefty fee, by the way. But do you know the exact number, Bob?
No, I do not know. I only know that it's actually for on-premises. It should not be available anymore. It should only be available when you are running this in the cloud. So when you when you lift and shift your VM to the cloud, basically. But now this actually gives you the way in between, right?
Yeah, so that is a good point, because that is if you are thinking, if you're in the middle, or if you are migrating your workloads to Azure, you not only get free extended security support for 3 years, you also get it additional 1 year if you're running it on Azure Stack HCI. If you're running it on Windows Server, the support for these things, I think, stops at in May or April. Is it passed already?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I think I think the extended security updates will be discontinued in April of 2023. I think April or May. Yeah, I might be remembering something wrong. But if you are running it on Azure Stack HCI, you get an additional 1 year support for this ESUs as well, right? So again, that is a huge benefit. It gives you 1 hour buffer, 1 year buffer of migrating your workloads from these legacy systems to newer ones, and you can keep doing it for free, essentially. Stretch clustering with S2D, again, we've talked about this. Windows Server has stretch clustering, but not with S2D. For Azure Stack HCI, it is natively available. Then you've got cluster-aware OS updates, or cluster-aware updates, not OS, just cluster-aware updates, CAU. For Windows Server, it is operating system only. Oh, by the way, what a cluster-aware update is basically that if you've got a cluster and you've got an update that requires a reboot, say, for example, what cluster-aware updates system or workflow does is that it updates one node. Then it evacuates the node first. It migrates the workloads running on that particular node to other nodes, and then it runs or it updates that particular node, reboots it, and then goes to the other node and rinse and repeat. Right. So why this matters is because in this way, if you go through the updates to all of your cluster, you do not get the downtime. And because this is a planned upgrade, essentially. So for Windows Server, this is OS only. So Microsoft will release some OS updates. And vendors, the hardware vendors will also most likely release some new driver versions or firmware versions and so on for the hardware. For Windows Server, you will only get cluster-aware updating for operating system, but for Azure Stack HCI, you will get it for both OS and hardware. Right. So what does not matter what the nature of the updates is, you will not lose any business. You will not have any downtime trying to update your whole cluster. Right. How cool is that? Right. Because again, all of this is automated, right? So you don't manually go and evacuate the node. This is all done in the background for you.
It's also a dressed down operating system, right? So it doesn't have all of these extra features which you could install, which then also require updates every month. So it is, slimmed down to only do what it is supposed to do, and then those updates are cluster aware as well. So that's great.
Exactly. Well, for a Windows Server, you've got desktop experience. You can also install it in command line. Yes, you can do it. But for Azure Stack HCI, it is only the core operating system, right? You don't have the desktop experience that you see in the Windows Server. So how do you manage that? You manage using Windows Admin Center, right? So you've got, you can install Windows Admin Center on the cluster itself, or you can also operate it from a client. You can operate it from a desktop. You connect to your cluster from anywhere, and then you operate your cluster that way. And so you don't, ideally you would not log into your Azure Stack HCI cluster like on the host level at all. You should be able to do everything from Windows Admin Center.
Okay.
Price we've already discussed again, right? So this is for Windows
we
Server.
will come
It's
back to
usually
that.
per core, and we'll come back to that. Yeah, what the exact numbers here are. So what are some of the use cases here, right? So when do we want to use Azure Stack HCI? Now, the first one we've already talked about, like if you are in the middle of refreshing your hardware from these legacy versions, especially 2008 and 2012, to the newer versions, that is where people are moving to Azure Stack HCI, given all the hybrid benefits that we just talked about, right? The extended security support and an additional year of ESUs only for Azure Stack HCI workloads.
Yeah, or even for VMware, you could do the same.
Yeah.
If you're using that, then you can also, sometimes you have to refresh the hardware and the licenses of those as well, and you could put Azure Stack HCI in place of that as well on new servers.
Exactly. Yeah, so this is just a part of it. Could be a part of your, since you're upgrading your software, or if you're upgrading your operating system, you may also want to upgrade your hardware, right? Because all the new things are all shiny and fancy, but your hardware has to, it should be able to support running all these fancy features as well. So it is always a good, maybe I would even say like the most optimally, maybe you should do it every 5 years. But if that's too ideal, let's say at least every 10 years, once you should refresh your hardware. Is that a fair statement to say, Bob? Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, well, most companies will actually do 4 or 5 years, and of course they will be a little bit late, so 6 years in the real case.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about it. Usually it doesn't take 10 years, but yeah, only in some cases,
not.
yes.
But there are, so I'm sure when you encounter some customers that are running 2000, well, hopefully not 2000, not a lot of 2008, but we still see a lot of 2012 floating around.
Yes.
Yeah,
But sometimes on newer hardware.
Yeah, newer hardware, but still the old operating system, because they've got some dependency on, the legacy framework, I guess. That is, again, that is also a reason that people not want to move to public Azure, because you cannot spin a virtual machine with 2012 on it in Azure. It is always, I think, it is 16 is the, you can lift and shift it, but if you, yeah. But if you were to, spin it up from the Azure portal, can you deploy a new virtual machine with 2012 on it?
I hope not, because it's not supported officially anymore. So
yeah.
But yeah, maybe you can. Maybe there is something there, and otherwise you can of course do it yourself. But yeah, let's just say that this is a good use case for in case that you are getting rid of some old hardware with whatever virtualization platform on it, which then gives you a possibility to install new hardware and get the Azure Stack HCI operating system on it in order to virtualize everything, and then it doesn't matter what guest workloads you put on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And not to mention that Azure Stack HCI is very, very performant. Right, so if you see here on the right side, under the green one here, high performance latency sensitive applications. So if you've got some applications that are sensitive that you want to be run at the top of their performance, where the latency is an issue, you may want to run it on-prem. Yeah? You may want to run it where the data is generated and not send it to Azure and wait for it to process and come back.
Yes.
I don't remember again the exact numbers. Maybe I should have done more research, but S2D is one of the fastest storage systems out there, right? So it's got millions of IOPS, even for the tiniest of Azure Stack HCI cluster. Even for a 2-node clusters, you get IOPS in the range of millions, and then that is really impressive. If you have any performant low latency application requirements, then Azure Stack HCI is definitely the way to go. Well, VDI or AVD as it is called, Azure Virtual Desktop, is another major use case of Azure Stack HCI for edge local access, right? So you can't have all of your employees coming to one single location and connect to one single network all the time. So you've got virtual desktop infrastructure set up that you can remotely connect to, let's say, a client VPN or whatever, and then work remotely and securely that way. Azure Stack HCI is an excellent use case for that because it helps you not only modern your software, but as well as hardware and be able to operate from anywhere in conjunction with all the hybrid services.
Right.
So we've talked about remote office and branch office already, right? So think about the retail stores or some hospital branches or whatever, wherever your patients or wherever your customers are. Data is being generated there, and you want to put it, you want to process it right then at the edge and then put it in the cloud for storage. It is also very tightly integrated with Kubernetes. AKS on HCI is again is the hot topic in the hybrid cloud area today because again the simple convenience, the simple consistency, the simple experience that running AKS on Azure Stack HCI gives you is unparalleled, right? So just because you are running an application on your servers on premise does not mean that you can or you have to give up on all the good things that that AKS is providing in the cloud. You can bring that down to your Azure Stack HCI cluster as well. Just for the sake of simplicity, just for the sake of convenience and maintenance. Licensing and costs. So we have touched upon this slightly, but here are the numbers. The host service fee, the crude fee or the overall fee for everything about Azure Stack HCI is $10 per physical core per month. Right. So if you've got a system, if you've got a node that has a dual core, let's say in total you've got 96 physical cores, then you'll only be billed for those 96 physical cores per physical per physical core per $10 per month. This is very straightforward. Now keep in mind that the guest operating system licensing is different. So if you're running AKS, it is built differently. If you're running Azure Stack, if you're running Windows Server operating system on it, it is built differently. But there are also ways to come around that. So as I previously mentioned, for $10 per core per month, you've got your virtualization platform set up. Now you want to install secondary operating system on it, which is Windows operating system, for example. Now there are two ways to do it. One is you can bring your own license. If you have got an existing data center agreement, license agreement with Microsoft, and you've already got the licenses, you can use those licenses on Azure Stack HCI as well. Nobody is stopping you from doing that. Or even if you don't have it, you can license your machines on the go, essentially, right? So as you spin them, if you take Windows Server subscription, then you will be charged $23.3 per physical core per month. But you will be able to activate licensing on all of your new virtual machines as you spin them. Of course, depending on how many cores that you give to each of the machine.
Yes, and in both cases you have that 60 days trial period, basically, which you will not be charged yet. But after those 60 days, you will get charged along the lines of these these first two items, unless of course you fall under the other licensing model, such as Samir said. Well, either you bring your own licenses for the guests, but also for the hosts as well. There's an option there, which is the third item, right?
Yes, exactly. So if you've got Windows Server data center license with software assurance, right? So as Bob mentioned, what software assurance is basically, if you've got that, all of these fees is waived off. And so this $10 per core per month plus 23.3 physical core per month, that comes down to $33.3 dollars per physical core per month. But if you've got if you've got Windows Server Data Center license with software assurance on top of it, this fee comes down to zero. And so,
Yes.
and so think about it now. This is running in Azure Stack HCI cluster is not costing you at all. It is free for you essentially. Right? How cool is
Yes,
that?
and also you have those licenses available for the guest
Yeah,
workloads as well, because it covers those.
exactly.
So that is the most important thing. So it doesn't really make it very cheap or something like that. That's not what this is shooting for. This is shooting for, either it costs an X amount of money to run everything, or you already have bought licenses, and then you can use those to offset the cost of running the Azure Stack, or the Azure Stack including its running workloads on top of it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So again, it's the goal always is to make things cheaper, definitely. But things are gonna get cheaper, I guess, eventually. But for now, what Microsoft is shooting for is the consistent experience across all the platforms, regardless of whether you're there was a lot of feedback that came from this licensing model, because as you know that there are a lot of enterprises, especially who've already purchased Windows Server licenses in bulk, and
Yes.
the only reason that was stopping them to go to Azure Stack HCI was that I've already got this and I don't want to add more cost to my licensing again. So what do I do if I'm already invested into licensing already? And so that's where Microsoft said, okay, fair enough. You've already got the licenses. Why don't you use those for Azure Stack HCI as well? And the guest
Very
that
good.
is running on top of it, right? So that nulls out all the licensing cost if you've got, and that is only and only if you've got Windows Server Data Center license with software assurance. AKS on HCI also has a similar billing model. It's billed monthly for, again, 0.80. This is for virtual core, mind you. So it's for virtual core per day, not physical core and not per month. It is per virtual core per day.
Yeah, if you translate
Again,
it, it's about $24 per month if it's translated into monthly money.
oh wow, that was quick math. Did you just do that?
No, did it before.
That was impressive. Okay, because if you did that just now, I'm impressed.
Yeah, but it's about the same as the other one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So how can I buy this thing, Samir? Where can I get it?
Amazing question, right? So when you go, when you're looking into, so say you're convinced now, Bob, I've managed to convince you to buy me a new Azure Stack HCI. Now you want to buy it. So what are the options? So there are two systems or two ways that you can go about this. One is integrated system and the other one is validated systems. Now, again, there are differences between each of them. Again, this is a very rundown list, a short list of all the major points. There is, again, a whole laundry list of things that compares these two things, but these are just the major ones. So integrated system, as the name suggests, if you were to, if you wanted a catchphrase to keep this in mind, is if it is an integrated system, that means that it is from the end to the begin. From the beginning to the end, everything is taken care of for you by the vendor and by Microsoft. If
Right.
if it's a validated system, then the collaboration is not 100%. Let's say it's not perfect. For certification, for example, it is the integrated system are continuously certified for rolling versions. Right. So when Microsoft releases the new version of Azure Stack HCI, all these integrated systems vendors will already have them, tested against all the harshest of conditions, and then only they suggest you the upgrade. It's like, okay, this new version is available. We have done extensive training on it. Sorry, not training, extensive testing on it, and we certify that it is safe to run. So that is where you go and update it using integrated lifecycle management. Again, here, this 1, 2, 3, fourth point down here. Using integrated lifecycle management, again, this is cluster level, cluster aware updates. So it takes one node, upgrades the operating system on it, reboots it, takes the other node, evacuates the node, balances the workloads, upgrades it, and then reboots it, and then moves on to the next one. Validated systems are not like that. So if I buy for with the version, I just, let's say I buy hardware that is certified for running Azure Stack HCI 22H2. That is what it is certified for, and that is what it is validated for. The next versions are not. So you have to manually, essentially, you have to manually test that, okay, this is safe to run before you move into production. And so that is a huge difference, a huge benefit if you're going through integrated systems. Integrated systems is the Microsoft recommended way, by the way. If you go through the documents, Microsoft will strongly recommend that you go the integrated systems route and not the validated systems route. Now, having said that, of course, since integrated systems are more reliable and convenient, they are also more expensive. But trust me, it is all worth every penny of the investment, because if you go for a cheaper solution now, and if should you run into a problem, it is gonna end up costing you, I don't know, hundreds and thousands, or hopefully not hundreds of thousands of dollars down the line. Right, so you go for the best system today to avoid any failures later.
Yes,
So
but for testing and
integrators,
those kind of things, you can use validated systems.
You can go for validated, sure. Yeah. But for production, you absolutely want to go for integrated systems only.
If you can.
Yes. So if you can, yeah. So I guess some of the other benefits here are that OEM that provides this hardware and Microsoft have joint engineering developments. Because all these OEMs are the big ones, they are the big players in this market. They are working with Microsoft engineering to help them prioritize the right features, to help them address all the bugs, to give them all the feedback that is coming from the field. These OEMs and Microsoft, they have joint engineering effort to deliver the best operating system that is possible. That is not the case for validated systems again, right? So you only get what you get certified only for one particular version. The rest of the things are on you. The other big or the most important thing that differentiates between these two models is the one-stop cluster level support ticket system. So what I mean by that is, should your server or should your cluster run into a problem, it can be a problem of any nature. It could be a software problem. It could be a hardware problem. You can go to either the OEM or Microsoft. So you don't have to say, even if it's an operating system problem and I have got a Dell integrated system, I can raise a ticket at Dell. If I've got the contacts and I've got the support for Dell, I can definitely go ahead and raise a ticket. Now, Dell is not the one that is giving you operating system features, or it is not the one supporting operating system. It is supporting hardware. But given the nature of the problem, it is going to interchange, it is going to exchange that data to Microsoft internally without having you to interfere. And Microsoft and Dell will work together to solve that problem. So you don't have to, regardless of what the nature of the problem is, you can either raise a ticket with Microsoft or with the hardware vendor. They're going to be working on them together and give you the final solution. They're not going to toss you from this side of the field to the other side, right? Because all of that is an integrated system. It is integrated effort made to give you the best experience possible.
Right. Ooh, nice.
Now sizer. So we've got a sizer that helps you identify what kinds of work or what is the hardware, the amount of hardware that you may want to go with. Now, keep in mind, this is only for estimate. This is in no way the final sizer that you must go through. If you go through to an integrated system, you go to let's say you go to Dataon or you go to Dell or you go to Lenovo, they will have their own sizers that are way more accurate because they know how their systems work. But this is a good indication to help you understand, okay, I may need somewhere around 2 or 4 servers because I'm running these kinds of workloads, and these are all the options that are available to me. So you can do your homework based on all the inputs that you provide in this Microsoft Sizer. And then with that, you can take that to the vendor and then discuss on that further. This is the link to go through it. Should we go through it, Bob, real quickly? Shouldn't take more
Yeah, I
than
was
5
just
minutes.
checking to log in, and then it says you don't exist.
Huh. Well, do you exist?
Apparently not, but I think I can sign in through the GitHub account, but then I just need to verify with my phone.
It's okay.
La, la, la.
I've got it open right here.
Right.
So I'll
So
go ahead
then
and
share your
my
screen.
Yes, sir. What am I sharing? Window. Which window? That one. Okay. Now you should be able to see a screen that says plan your solution. So all I've done is I've just logged in using my Microsoft account. So I have got a couple of playground projects that I've got here, but I'll just go ahead and create a new one. Call this TopQore project, for example. I'll just create it. Now, as I go and open that project, you see there are some high level options that I can choose from here. I will very quickly talk through individual options because we are kind of running out of time already. And not to mention, don't fear. We will be talking about all of these features in depth in the upcoming episode. So for now, this is just a trailer, just a teaser. So system type, we just spoke about it, right? So you've got integrated system, which is recommended, and then you've got a validated node. So we'll go with the integrated system. Preferred CPU family. So this is you choose from the two major chip manufacturers, AMD and Intel. So let's say we go with Intel. Preferred solution builder, right? So so this is the list of all the validated as well as integrated partners. Now you see some of these are highlighted while some of these are blacked out. This depends on what you choose here, system type. So since I've got integrated system, only the options that are integrated systems are available to me to select from. So if I choose validated node and then hit on this, now you'll see there's a lot more options, but these are validated systems. These are not integrated systems. So Dell, for example, does not provide validated system at all. They only provide you integrated ones. So everything here is light up, just other than Dell Technologies. So let's go back to integrated system because that is what we want. Let's go with whatever, HPE, for example. Now there are advanced settings. If you require a 2-node solution, or you want to, okay, let's go. Or if you, or if you don't choose this, it is going to give you a node solution that has more nodes in it, right? So, but for whatever reason, if you're constrained to 2-node solution, then make sure to check the Xbox. Now these are resiliency requirements. If you want high availability, now high availability is always recommended. Well, it is a requirement in this case that you must choose high availability option. Now it could be N+1 or N+2. N+1 basically means that the number of nodes plus an additional node. N+2 is number of nodes that your solution requires plus 2 additional nodes for the sake of high availability, right? So in case if a drive goes down or some storage fails or some server goes down or the whole node goes down, then you have a backup node to run your workloads on. And so that is where high availability comes in. So let's keep it at n+1 for now. Storage failures to tolerate, again, like I said, if a drive fails, then you've got additional true drives where you can essentially replicate that data and not lose any of it, even if your drives are down. Storage preferences. Now, storage type. There are 3 types of this. This is all NVMe, all flash, or hybrid. Hybrid is essentially the combination of flash drive plus hard disk drives, the spinning disks, right? Again, there are differences between an HDD, an SSD, and an NVMe. Maybe, and when we talk about storage in more detail, we'll talk about that. But for now, keep in mind, or as the bottom line of this is that HDD is good for storage. It is good for capacity, and flash is good for performance, right? So if you're using hybrid, then you're using the combination of performance as well as capacity. Not to mention, all NVMe is the most expensive. All flash or all SSD is less expensive, but still more than HDD. And hybrid is the cheapest, but it is not the most performant. NVMe is the most performant one. Now, resiliency preference, now you can optimize it for performance or you can optimize it for capacity. Again, if you are, so whatever you choose will have effect on how much cache that you're using at the end of the day. Because if you want more performance, that means you want more cache, because the cache will not be counted as capacity. It is cache is where you initially store your data for a brief period of time and then you flush it down to the capacity tier, right? But the data in the cache tier is quick, it is fast, it is easily accessible, but it takes away from the storage capacity. So you may want to study your workload first, whether you want the best performance or you just want to use it as a storage array and you want more capacity. The persistent cache and in-memory cache, let's not talk about them for now because they are a little more advanced at this stage. We don't need to talk about them. Planning ahead. So if you're planning to go further in your solution, expand your solution. So again, these are, as you can see, you cannot say I'm going to grow my business by 15% in the next 15 months. That is impossible to predict, right? So this is all the approximate number. So I say, okay, in the next 6 years, maybe I might expand my business by 50%. So you keep that buffer, you purchase a system today that is able to accommodate 50% more expansion in the coming years, so that you don't have to go ahead and buy new hardware, new software all over again, right? So you've got your future planning all set up. Now, whether or not you want to use SDN, using SDN is actually optional. You can either use SDN or you can use traditional networking. If you check the box, then these are all the network SDN components. Again, if these don't make sense to you, that's all right. In the SDN episode, we will talk more about this later. Okay, so I'll go ahead, select that. So this is where you add your workloads. Now this is in no way the comprehensive list of all of your workloads. This is just again for estimation. So let's say my workload is this one here is I'll call it production, for example, and I am running. What do you want to run in production, Bob? Do you want SQL or do you want VDI?
I want general VMs. Yep.
All right. So let's keep it general. And I want, say, 10 VMs. Is that good enough?
20.
20 or
at least 20.
More the merrier. Okay. So per VM, so what do you need per VM? So how many vCPUs, virtual CPUs do you want? So no way 2 is going to cut it for me. So I'm going to say 4. Because I like my virtual machines performant and fast. Okay. So virtual to physical ratio. This is where the system that you purchased hardware wise comes into picture. Like this is virtual CPU to physical CPU ratio. It is good to have it. I think in the most vendors, they will say that it is 1:3 is from physical to virtual. 1:3 is a good ratio. So
Yep.
what we're gonna do is we're gonna say 1 here, for example, right? 1:4. It's good enough. For memory, let's say 4 GB memory is not
8.
gonna cut it. Yeah, so let's do 8. Storage.
Storage is
I don't
fine.
know. I want 2000 GB. I'm crazy like that. So I'm gonna go add this workload. So you see, I've got some calculations here. So I've got number of VMs 20, vCPUs. I'm going to need 80. This is my density, and this is the amount of memory I'm gonna need in. This is the cluster level configuration, and then I'm gonna need 40 TB of storage. Now, just for the sake of it, I'm gonna go add another workload, call it all VDI servers, for example. Then I'm gonna select VDI. Now keep in mind, whatever you choose here does not really make a huge difference on the outcome because all the options do remain the same. But having said that, there are some small best practices that vary depending on what you choose here. So, for example, for the VDI, you want all the beefy machines. So I'm gonna run 32 vCPUs on this because VDI is a a draining workload. So I'm gonna need, let's say, okay, keep 4. That is 8. That is fine. Memory, I'm gonna need what 64 GB, and storage I'm gonna need. Yeah, per machine, whatever, right? So again, this is an indication. I'm just spitballing here. This is in no way going to reflect my actual final production environment. But as I said, trying to prove the point that whatever you choose here is only for best practices, only for pointers. It does not really make a whole lot of difference when you are actually sizing the solution.
Right.
Okay, because if you are very new to this, you may see, okay, so I've got SQL, I've got VDI, and I've got general, but I want to run, I don't know, I want to run a mail system on this server, or I want to use the server as a file service, as a file server. I don't have those options in this dropdown. What do I do? Right?
Use general.
Just select general. Yeah, just select general. Doesn't really matter what you choose. The calculations are going to remain the same. And what you choose here is not like if I choose VDI, I cannot run anything else on this machine. That is not the case at all. You can run anything and everything. But just for example, just as a pointer, just as a best practice. Now this is going to give me, oh, no matching hardware. Apparently my preferences are way too high.
Yeah.
So let's tone that down a little bit.
Well, storage type maybe also any.
Yeah, any is fine. I'm gonna have to tone this one down, the VDI one, so I'll just delete it.
Yep, and the production we give it a little bit less storage because I think it's the storage that is giving us the problem. 40 terabytes.
I don't think so. It should be some
maybe
machines.
On a 2-node cluster.
Yeah.
It means one node should be able to run 40 terabytes. That might be a lot.
Yeah, so let's stick to 200 GB. Right, that should give me something.
Oops.
Oh, okay. What is the problem now, bro? Integrated system, Intel. Oh, maybe HP does not give. That's what I'm saying. I know for a fact Dell does. So let's do that.
Sure.
Oh, and I also know what the problem is. Problem is we have checked this box. Yeah.
All right. Let's see what they get. Let's see what they give us.
Next, and results. There you go. So now we've got a Dell system AX650. It's a 1U dual socket enterprise server. Again, so what you do with this is you take this to Dell and you say, these are my overall high level requirements. Dell will most likely give you a different sizing because they have got a much better sizing tool that takes into consideration all other things that this sizer is not. But at least this is giving you an idea. Okay, what I'm gonna need is I am going to need total 3 servers. So I'm gonna run my workloads on 2 of them, and one is for resiliency. So it will obviously make use of all 3 nodes. And this is just some of my configuration that it is going to give me, like CPU wise, memory wise, and storage wise, how much is gonna. So this reserve is going to be this much. This is going to be leftover. This much is kept for our future growth. This is for resiliency, and this is the actual usage, right? So if you think about resiliency, because resiliency can be done using multiple ways. So there's mirroring, you can do mirroring, or you can do parity, or you can do mirror accelerated parity. There are different technologies. Depending on which one you choose, you have to have some reserve storage. You have to have some storage taken into account for replication and so on. So this is all the sizer will consider all of these things and give you an output saying that, okay, this is roughly what you need. But this is in no way the final configuration or the final solution. You take this to the vendor, and then they give you a comprehensive sizing. So that was a very quick demo. I think that is about it. That was the last slide, isn't it?
Okay, then I'll take this one back into sharing into this screen. That should give us the webinar back. All right, so with that, I just wanted to talk to you very shortly about the community badges system that we have. So if you follow a number of our webinars, you can get badges like this one, like the one at the left top, sorry. And of course, it will have something written in that box over there in the middle, which relates to the actual webinar that you have followed. Now, if you have accumulated 4 of them, then you will get the Scholar badge right next to it. And 4 more, at 8, you get the Champion badge, and so on throughout the bottom of this list as well. And as you move forward, you might also receive additional perks and things that our colleague Spandana comes up with. So it might be a t-shirt, it might be a voucher, it might be something else. Or maybe also an opportunity to present together with us. Why not? So if you follow these trainings or these webinars through registering through the website, that actually means that we know that you have watched this, and then we can issue you a badge like the one over there. So that is a little bit about this story. You can find us through the TopQore website, TopQore, and then go to the webinars section, and you can actually also get badges for previous webinars if you watch them and register for them. Now, with that, we want to thank you very much for watching the show and being here with us. If there are any open questions, let me know. Do we have any left, except kindly sharing the recording as well? Of course, we will do that as well. We will have a recording available to you. So with that, I think we are there, Samir. Thank you very much for
absolutely.
For the whole story, and let's close it off for now.
Yeah, see you again in the next episode.